Today we're in part 3 of our sermon series on the Sabbath, and so we'll wrap up what the Sabbath is. Does anybody remember what the word Sabbath in Hebrew is? Shabbat, what does that mean? Rest. Yes. So I thought I would rest today too and not do a sermon. Is that all right? So people are like, yeah, right. No, just kidding. Let's pray together. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So today we're going to be in Deuteronomy again. Deuteronomy is also where we find in Deuteronomy 5, one set of the commandments, the Ten Commandments. It's also in Exodus 20. But in Deuteronomy 15, it looks at not only is there a Sabbath, but there's also how we, every seventh year, are to provide for a remission of debts, a forgiveness of debts. There's a Sabbath that is given, extended to people. We're also going to be reading today from Luke 15, which is the story of the prodigal son. And so we're going to look at the Sabbath through the lens of these two stories. And what does that mean for us? So again, I understand that with the Sabbath, it is hard. How do we rest all day? What is it that we are trying to do? And so let's read these scriptures. Every seventh year you shall grant a remission of debts, and this is the manner of the remission. Every creditor shall remit the claim that is held against a neighbor, not exacting it of a neighbor who is a member of the community, because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed. If there's any among you, anyone in need, a member of your community in any of your towns within that land the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted. Do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your needy neighbor. You should rather open your hand willingly, lend enough to meet the need, whatever it may be. Be careful that you do not entertain a mean thought, thinking, the seventh year, the year of remission, is near. And therefore view your needy neighbor with hostility and give nothing. Your neighbor might cry to the Lord against you, and you would incur guilt. Give liberally and be ungrudging when you do so. For on this account the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in all that you undertake. Since there will never cease to be some in need on the earth, this is written thousands of years ago, I therefore command you, open your hands to the poor and needy neighbor in your land. God was looking out, understanding that there was going to be this tendency on our part to disempower, to dehumanize others, to acquire everything, and therefore, how could we, every 7 years, sort of make sure everybody had a chance to start over again? Luke 15, the prodigal son. Let's read this story. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. And so he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will get up, and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. So here we can see in the story already, somebody goes out, they think they're going to live life a certain way, they know everything, they go out, and then it doesn't work out. They come back, and with guilt and shame, they say, you know what, I messed up, and I'll work for you. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion, and he ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his slaves, quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son, the brother, was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he got him back safe and sound. Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you and have never disobeyed your command. Yet you've never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, notice he doesn't call him brother, when this son of yours came back who had devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. Then the father said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. We live in this place of grace, yet we seldom realize it because we seldom really focus on our need to be in deep relationship with God. Here was the oldest son, the older brother, who lived in a place of grace. Nothing was ever taken from him or withheld from him. Yet he was pretty upset because the other brothers seemed to have it pretty good, to be given something to him that he squandered, that he really didn't earn. I know none of us have ever been upset with somebody that got something that we felt they didn't earn. Anybody feel that little bit of jealousy and tinge inside you when you get a little bit PO'd at somebody? How'd they get that? They don't deserve that. Man, how did God know you would think and feel this way so many years ago? This other pastor writes this, and it's sarcastic. Spirituality is nice, and God is, of course, real, but do we really need God? We've got it pretty much covered, right? How many of us really take the time to focus on our need and reliance on what God does for us, gives to us, that relationship that needs tender care, loving, and support? I mean, we've got it pretty much covered. Meanwhile, we're so disconnected from our true selves that we can barely stand when emotion of almost any kind arises. It throws us off our equilibrium. We are chronically overcommitted, under-resourced, and exhausted. Who even has time to take a Sabbath, to celebrate the Sabbath, to do nothing? There is so much to do. I mean, spirituality is nice, but just give it to us in a little dose here and there, because there's so many other things to do that we need to do on a Sunday or a Saturday, or actually we just so fill our agenda and times, but to actually sit and be still 15 minutes a day, whatever it may be, to carve out time in your week where you might allow your soul to be nourished and cared for by God. This is hard for us to absorb and understand. All my life, I've been a type A driven person, outgoing. Growing up, I was praised for things that I did. When I realized if I didn't mess things up, I wouldn't get yelled at a lot. And so if I could do things and do them right, which was never, ever quite attainable, but if I kept doing things, And so all my life, it's do, do, do. And so then to actually just be, to listen, to pray, to be, to allow the words are read in Scripture, to allow the Spirit of God to move and to take time. I still try to tell God how God should spend God's time with me. God, I'm sitting here praying. I think the Holy Spirit should show up right now. It would be quite convenient. Just give me this moment right now. That'll be good the rest of the day. We forget that we are creatures with bodies and minds and hearts that need tending, dependent on the love and care of the Creator who is ready to meet us when we stop moving long enough to be met. We forget that we are in this together alongside everyone else, and we need one another because life isn't meant to be done alone or against others. And human beings that forget their humanity are arguably the most destructive force in the universe. I found that in one of my readings, and I forgot where. So that's somebody else's words, but I really, really liked it. We forget that we are creatures with bodies and minds and hearts that need tending, dependent on the love and care of the Creator, get this, who's ready to meet you wherever you are, if you will stop moving for just a moment. What do you already have planned for later this day? Things that you want to do. Does any of it include fun, rest, napping, talking with family? So in all of this, when we talk about the Sabbath, again, Jesus says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. You see, the religious leaders of the times who often criticized Jesus were critiquing Jesus because they wanted to follow the letter of the law, forgetting that the Sabbath was made for humanity. The intent is that it is okay to do those things that help show love to yourself and to a neighbor, to care for, to deepen the relationship, to allow you to abide in the vine, in Jesus Christ. Your journey of faith where God is meeting you, if you will stop long enough to allow God to meet you. Again, we take up our cross. We've talked about this now for the last 5 Sundays. When we take up our cross, when we set our sights on someone or something other than the cross, we have traded the death and resurrection of Jesus with a more convenient and acceptable means of imagining what it means to follow Jesus, to be a disciple. Focusing on the cross keeps us guided down this path of what it means to follow, to be humble, and to be humble in heart, to be willing to love, to be willing to fight against your desire to be upset and mad because somebody else got something that you think they don't quite deserve or really didn't earn. You have to set aside time in your life to deal with that, to process that. Otherwise, what happens? The anger, the rage just continues to build, and you become more hardened and toughened, and you just dehumanize the other. They become the enemy. And Jesus quite clearly says, love your neighbor as yourself. We have to be diligent, aware of what is happening. But if we never rest, then we never get to process all that is going on. Jesus says in Matthew 11, come to me, all that you are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Each of you, as I look around, I know carries heavy burdens, family issues, health issues, job issues, stress at work, stress at school. We all carry heavy burdens. We all have things inside of us that we don't want anyone else here to know. We carry heavy burdens. Jesus says, I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, that yoke that allows what you're pulling and carrying to be shared with Jesus. Learn from me. So we are learning as disciples who are following Jesus Christ, learning what it means to walk, to carry the cross, to rest in the Sabbath. Jesus says, for I am gentle and humble in heart. The heart, the very center of all minds, thought, conscious motives from which the actions happen. Jesus is gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. If your soul is agitated, if your soul is weary, it's like your internal battery just fizzles out. Soon you have no energy or strength or vision in which to live your life. You lose your way. You can no longer focus on the cross. In May of this year, there was a Gallup News poll that said 31% of U.S. adults said that they attended church in the past 7 days. 31% of U.S. adults said they attended church in the past 7 days. That's a lot of people not going to church. That's a lot of people not having something in their life which directs them and guides them, that recenters them, which speaks to them in a way that says you don't have to watch and listen and carry on with everything out there. What does your soul need? What are you choosing to focus on? The 24/7 connectivity that we have with our phones or access to the internet allows us to be saturated with messages of hate and demise. Very seldom with generosity and love and humbleness. It strips us of our freedom, of our humanity, of our willingness to love another, because it often will feed into the very feelings and issues and anger and stereotypes and racism, all the other things that we have, it will trigger within us. But can it also trigger the good that is in you? What are you looking at and focusing on? We run ourselves ragged until we no longer know who we are. The Sabbath, Shabbat, rest. The Lord created the Sabbath. It's the fourth commandment. Remember it, observe it, and keep it holy. There is something there that God knows it's a commandment and a gift of love for us. For 400 years, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt to Pharaoh. Their worth was what they created. Deep within their psyche, they were changed to believe that they were only of little value, of only good for what they could produce. What's going on in your psyche? What's going on in your soul? What past church hurt or childhood trauma or what your parents said to you runs deep in your psyche, which still enslaves you today? One day in 7, God says, you, stop all your work. You do this because you're not defined by your output. One day in 7, for everyone who honors this, all the distinctions between us, rich and poor, slave and free, young and old, citizen, foreigner, alien, whatever, they all disappear because we're resting in this grace of God. It's a cycle of rest and renewal, a cycle of rest and renewal. We regularly have to be willing to stop doing and just be. Don't be tight-fisted and hard-hearted. God knew how we would be, what our tendency would be, that we wouldn't necessarily want to help others because we believe what the world tells us, that there's scarcity. Yes, we live in where we have to pay all of our bills, including the church, with money. But again, when I buried Don on Friday, I didn't bury his money with him or anything else. You see, the Sabbath command takes the slavery out of us. It gives us a chance to say, this is mastering me. This is overpowering me. Whatever this is in your life. And this prodigal son, we've heard that story many times, and there's so many different ways to learn from it and take it. But again, here we have the younger son that goes out and spends and all the stuff, but comes back. And the father is there to welcome and to celebrate and to rejoice and say, you are back to life. That's what Jesus does. There's victory on the cross that says you regain your life and your freedom when you follow me. Grace was extended to this. And see, there's some of you that have gone out and squandered and messed it up and still carry the grief and shame. God is ready to forgive you from what's happened on the cross. You are a beloved child of God. The child's worth was because he was a child of God. Not because what he had done or not done, asked for forgiveness or not, none of that. But yet many of us are really that older son who lives in a place of grace. We're still living there, yet we get jealous and angry when someone else seems to get grace that we don't think they deserve. Because you have lived a pretty good life. You are here in church today. You've done all these things to earn what you think you have now in life. To earn the grace. And some more than others will always secretly be like, well, I hope people see me at church. I hope they see how many tables I've set up or how many committees I've served on. I'm such a good Christian. And then here comes this other person into church. Who are they? How can I just love them? We can talk about it because, one, it's in the Bible. We can talk about it because, man, it's so real in our lives. So real in our lives. But Sabbath allows us to reflect on and realize, man, you are loved and valued and cherished because of who you are. And that's a redemption of your humanity. That's a redemption of your freedom. It allows you to approach your day differently. But it's hard for us to let go of that false idea that you've earned. When we take time to rest, we can shift from slavery to freedom. We can awaken from death to life. You can feel your joy being made complete. You can experience rest for your souls. You can stop and let God meet you right where you are. For Sabbath begins at sundown. There was evening and day, as it says in Genesis. The day starts with rest. The day starts with rest. What is your redemptive direction? And again, as you look at this, Sabbath doesn't have to be a whole day that you set aside. It's how you go about it. What are you learning to do week by week that's a little bit different, that puts you in relationship with Jesus, your Savior, to experience the love of God for each one of us, a love that transforms and renews and starts to move in your life. Amen? Amen.